Welcome to this week's edition of the DC Life. I'm your host, Sal Mike. I got my co-host, Micah Franco from CageMinds.com, and we're going to jump into it. It's UFC 196, a.k.a. UFC Fight Night 82. It was headlined by Johnny Hendricks and Wonder Boy. Wonder Boy surprised a lot of people. Some people, I should say.
Wonder Boy showed us the secret of his powers, like his entrance song says.
Yeah, it was an interesting night. I don't know if it's more so the timing of the matchup, whether it was good or bad for Johnny Hendricks. Styles make fights. You know, the change of the camp, the struggle, the weight cut, him getting old overnight, possibly. I mean, this is a very unforgiving sport, mixed martial arts. And even in boxing, you become old overnight, 9 times out of 10. It's not a forgiving sport one bit, like where you gradually decrease in your skill set. It can really, truly happen. Like one day you'll just wake up and everything's not going for you.
He honestly said he was hesitant, Hendricks, going in there against Thompson, and that's really what I felt was in there. I thought we were going to see Big Rick, a Mag Truck, him go in there and use his power, use what he felt was his advantage, and go to force in his will. He couldn't close the distance. Footwork, as everyone on Fox Sports is alluding to, is dominating the sport right now. Demetrius Johnson, Dominic Cruz, Conor McGregor, now Wonder Boy. If you can move your feet faster, cut the angles better, straight ahead is not proving to be the best tactics right now.
Isn't it kind of funny how things kind of go in spurts? You know, you see the wrestler, you see the jiu-jitsu player. Now you're seeing the guys with great boxing footwork. Or not great, I should say decent boxing footwork and movement. And you're seeing them be the guys right now. And then next, you know, everybody's going to finally catch up to them. It's like ever evolving.
It is ever evolving. I mean, this is a young sport. I mean, we're not old guys, and we've been around here really since the inception of it. We can remember, we were young then, but there's leaps and bounds and growing. I mean, from jiu-jitsu to, like you said, wrestling, to now the strikers, and even thinking about, look at where we are with women's MMA in comparison to the male right now. They're still a little behind, so imagine what we're going to be seeing when they catch up and the speed at which they even move.
Oh yeah, I mean, you'll see. Unfortunately, you see the UFC champion Holly Holm. You know, she'll be an afterthought at that point. You know, these girls will be bigger, stronger, faster, just the same like it's happening to all these other fighters. Randy Couture was considered one of the greatest fighters ever, and still is. But like heavyweight, he would move back and forth. He'd get mauled by these big old giant heavyweights. He did get mauled by one named Brock Lesnar. You know, as how big and evolved the sport was then, it just happens. It happens, and every athlete improves greatly on it. Heavyweights. Speaking of heavyweights, did you wake up for this match?
Oh no, actually, this one put me to sleep. And we're
talking about Roy Nelson, Jared Rosholt.
Well, if we didn't already tell you guys, it was Thompson first round knockout, 3-11 the first round, kicks, flurry of punches. Hendricks went down. Co-main event: Roy Nelson, Jared Roshaw. Roshaw proved to not be a fighter. He could not close the distance. He had no game plan for closing the distance. His game plan for closing the distance was what I expected to happen. Big country to wing a big shot, get slightly off balance, and Roshaw to be able to tackle. When that did not happen, Roshaw did not get the fight to the ground. He landed, I think, more shots, actually, than Nelson, but it was just an ugly fight all around. It was hard to score. In essence, it was a mark of evolution for Roy Nelson, who stayed behind a jab, stayed calm, and didn't throw any bombs. But it was an unforgiving fight for the fans. People were pointing out on Twitter, we were supposed to see this on pay-per-view. You got to be kidding me. Roshaw, it's not long for the UFC, I believe. Who knows if Roy Nelson is, but Roy Nelson had to get an ugly win to at least remain from not getting cut, and did what he could, but that was a horrible fight to watch. It put me to sleep.
Yeah, I didn't. I'll be honest with everybody. I didn't even watch it. I turned the channel. I took off, and I just did not want to see that. Lost interest completely in this fight. in terms of Roy Nelson found a loophole, and we're going to touch on this in one of the segments. We're going to talk about free agency, how they're finding loopholes to bring in their sponsors and show off their sponsorships. He had to win this fight in order to stay in contract. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. I'm sure he got a tongue lashing from Zuffa and the UFC brass, be it Dana White, Fertitas, or somebody higher up in the company, giving him a tongue lashing for what he did at the open workouts. But we'll touch on that
a little bit
later. Light heavyweights,
again,
OSP.
not long for the company. Rafael Feijão. I don't want to point fingers at people for being on performance-enhancing drugs, but was Feijão not a completely, totally different person in Strikeforce?
He was, and look at who he was with, Anderson Silva, at the time.
Isn't he still with Silva?
I don't know who knows? They rotate teams, and they become their own teams, and but at that time, he was hanging out with the champion, and it seems that. And this is just what it seems. It seems like the Brazilian athletes are the ones that are having trouble with this whole performance-enhancing issues, and you're seeing them really fade.
Well, we knew they didn't have a commission down there. Things are changing. It's getting crazier. Now we're seeing what the raw work ethic and the science of what's going on up here in America really proving through for them, and the successful ones are guys that are up here following those ways. But just talking about the fight, OSP, well, Rafael didn't fight. OSP picked him apart. The first round, it looked like there was an apparent leg injury. It was an ankle injury to OSP or a foot injury. Rafael had the ability with some kicks. He really could have taken advantage of it. Didn't do anything. Got put on his back a bunch of times. He survived the fight. He should be cut by the UFC, and really, Bellator shouldn't even look at him. I mean,
they may, because he is a former Strikeforce fighter, but at the same time, hey, let him go to ONE FC.
He doesn't look long for fighting here and looking impressive. I don't know if it was impressive or just better athletics again in the case that Joseph Benavidez defeated Zach Makovsky. I really like this guy, but he just hasn't found the formula to put it together against top fighters. His fight against Dodson looked like a sparring match, and this time he came in very one-dimensional. Believed his key to victory was putting Benavidez on his back. Benavidez is a frantic fish when he touches the ground, not getting him on his back. His guillotine was too good. He landed the bigger, heavier shots on the feet. And Benavidez, very key to go out of his way and thank and credit Dwayne Bang Ludwig with improvements in his game. We are seeing the decimation of Team Alpha Male in front of us right now.
Well, I think the writing's been on the wall since Joe Rogan announced that he was going to buy Ultimate Fitness, and that Ultimate Fitness is Uriah Faber's gym where Team Alpha Male trains at one point. So when the owner of the gym that you're supposed to be a part of it, a fight team, decides to start selling it and moving on and stuff like that, well, these guys got to do what's best for them, and they got to figure out where they're going to land, because you see the writing on the wall. If somebody's trying to sell their gym, say Greg and Wink or whoever the shareholders are, I believe the newspaper announced that it was Wink, his wife, and a few others, but say they started shopping around the Jackson Wink's Academy. They start shopping it around. These guys got to realize, hey, look, Wink's not going to be here. Greg's possibly not going to be here anymore. Where do I go from here? They got to do what's best for them. I don't think it's as much drama. I think the drama lies with Uriah and Ludwig from past experiences, but it shouldn't have come to anybody's surprise, especially if he's shopping it around, himself included, that these guys are going to do what's best for them. He's done what's best for him all his career, be it King of the Cage, WEC, now UFC. Uriah has done what was very best for Uriah Faber, and I just don't understand why he would be upset about these guys finding out what's best for them.
He's upset. I can't comment on why. Also very interesting, they announced the new head coach of Team Alpha Male, Justin Buchholz. That leaves a lot to be said. But again, we're talking about UFC Fight Night. So Misha Krokonov, 11-2, made a highly anticipated debut against Alex Nicholson. Nicholson at the weigh-ins, congratulations to him, proposed to his wife, then went out and got beat down, got put in a face crush, a rear naked choke that just crushed his jaw. You could hear it start to pop online. You can find that everywhere. He tapped. Krokonov Looks like a big, thick guy with some grappling skills, but has no movement. We'll see how he progresses. But right now, he doesn't look like a top 10, maybe a top 10 fighter in the division because it's so decimated, but not a top 5 or a title threat yet. Up there at light heavyweight. But we always need guys at 205.
And the 40-year-old Mike Pyle. And this guy's been training, I believe he was with Randy Couture as well at the time. So these old men always seem to find a way. You can't count these guys out. They're just tough as nails. And he went out there and he won the fight against Spencer Fisher. TKO strikes, round 3. I mean,
Sean Spencer picked him apart, outstruck him, had him hurt, but you can't beat Will.
You can't beat Will. You can't beat experience. You know, and the old man came through and won the fight. It was a good fight. Joshua Berkman and KJ Noons fought to a kind of a snoring
decision. Josh Berkman lost 18 pounds in one day. That obviously hampered him. It must have hampered his mental stability too, because the first round, it's 2 rounds, I think he had a beautiful kicking game going, was really affecting Noons with it. In the third round, he just said, let me try to wrestle him. Let me change this up, and took a lot of big shots. KJ Noons is his own worst enemy. When he's active, when he's throwing, he can hurt you, he can knock you out. But it's when he decides to throw.
He hurt his hand, I think.
He hurt his left hand early in the
Looking at it, he was even showing the ref, and I think he cut it inside. I think that really bothered him, and from there on, he just completely stopped.
Exactly.
It was very, very weird. Derek Lewis,
he's a beast. He punches holes through mats.
That guy, I would never want to get hit by. I mean, that's a big, strong man, and I was just amazed at how he just, wow. I mean, his punches were ridiculous.
He threw down and beat up Damian Grabowski. Grabowski never needs to come to America. He is like 20-0 in Europe and 0-3 in America. He's been in Bellator. He's been in the UFC. He has not fared well coming over. He's a big guy, and he's able to put his grappling game into success and beat down opponents over there. Not faring well in the United States. Just doesn't work out for him. Flyweights.
Wait. We're going to talk about that the last one.
We're gonna move that to last. Diego Rivas nearly killed Noad Lahat is undefeated except for when he catches flying knees in his face. Diego Rivas was dominated and had his back taken and was meat in the first round, and in the second round landed a flying knee.
And then what about Alex Wright versus...
Alex Wright and Artem Labov. Wow, Conor McGregor's towel boy will just remain his towel boy. Carry my bucket, son, because you're a 500 fighter who got picked apart by a longer fighter and you have no ground game.
And now let's move to welterweight.
Welterweight up. Mickey Gall punched a boxer in the face and then choked him out. Mike Jackson got hit hard. He got hit hard.
You know how stupid this sounds when you say 0-0 with a professional record of 0 wins and 0 losses. That is the stupidest shit I've ever heard of in the UFC.
Can't they just say making his pro debut?
Bellator gets slammed all the time for their matchups, and this bullshit gets put on, and everybody's okay with it. Nobody bats an eye at it. And it's like ridiculous. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys don't get, like, you have Ariel Helwani sucking on Mickey Gall and Mike Jackson on his show, and they're like, I'm like, are you serious? You're that much of a homer that you're over there blasting everybody blasts the way Bellator and Spike do their shows? Nobody can at this point. That's ridiculous. It is so stupid. 1-0 and 0-0 are fighting inside the UFC octagon. Are you kidding me?
I got no clue how Mike Jackson made it there. The Mickey Gall thing, it is what it is. The part that you have to take this with a grain of salt because it's the CM Punk factor. How do you handle this? How do you handle a guy that has no combat sports and doing a media grab and him wanting to make it? Because we all know, if they put him in there against any real UFC fighter, he's dead meat.
You know what? Tough shit. Brock Lesnar had to get in there.
Brock Lesnar was a Division I championship wrestler, such a pedigree.
Yeah, if the UFC signed you and you want to come from professional wrestling just like Brock Lesnar did, then fuck it. You better suck it up, get your ass in there, and fight. And fight UFC caliber competition, not bullshit 1-0, 0-0. Look at Frank Mir. Are you kidding me? A former champion.
I got no clue what's going on with the UFC these days. I think, in essence of when Bellator puts together Benson Henderson and Andrei Korshkov, and they finally give us a real deserving title fight, the UFC went the other way, and they come up with a real bullshit fight, like bringing up Ken Shamrock in the grave of Hoist Gracie. Yeah. So they're each pulling their own tactics. They're each playing each other's own games.
If anybody's talking shit about that matchup, fuck you, look at the UFC, what they're doing.
They both bullshit. Do crap stuff. They're both jockeying on the side of entertainment.
At least those two gentlemen have mixed martial arts backgrounds.
Hey, okay. They're doing it in the same... Okay, wrong one. Okay, Kimbo Slice and Dada 5000.
Kimbo even has more of a mixed martial art. Dada... Fuck Dada, he's that stupid dog fights or whatever.
Well, they're bringing in a Dada 5000. Ever. That's like, Kimbo Slice is Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall's been 5 years dedicated to this. Kimbo
Slice is not Mickey Gall.
Because he had a lot more...
He went to a show, he got on there, he did his thing, he got into the UFC, won a couple fights, lost a couple fights. Then Mickey Gall hasn't proven himself. He beat up a media member in Mike Jackson.
He beat up a media member. They're going to have him watch the fight.
Michael Frankel, you're getting in the cage and you're going to fight a guy. No, if he wins, he's getting signed to the UFC. Do you understand how dumb that sounds?
It sounds ridiculous.
What I mean? This guy, ridiculous. Mike Jackson, the true Jackson, is media.
He's media. He is a Golden Glove boxing champion from Texas, and he has a kickboxing background. And according to Legacy, he did have an amateur background. So, just saying, he does have more active, competitive experience than CM Punk.
Whatever. I guess agree to disagree. This guy is garbage. I think
so. You will not be having a fight party for UFC 199 for CM Punk's debut on pay-per-view.
I don't. You think they're going to make that the main event?
No. It's not going to be the main event. I'm thinking that they're bringing him on for a reason. They want eyes on it. They're not going to let this fight happen on a prelim. It's going to be your worst nightmare. 0-0 and 2-0. On a pay-per-view card, kicking it off.
Well, there's nothing I can do about that. I mean, whether it's pay-per-view or not, as long as it's not the headlining of the pay-per-view, I'd be fine with it. I mean, whatever you guys are gonna do. It's not like I can control the prelims, but at the end of the day, yeah, we will have a UFC 199 viewing party. So we'll.
So Sal is gonna have his eyes closed. But he's gonna have to see
I'm going. I'm gonna go take a shit. Is what I'm gonna do during that fight because it's a stupid fight to be watching. There are more amateur fighters here in New Mexico that are way more deserving.
Oh, there are a lot more people deserving.
Those two guys' spots. Those three guys' spots inside the Zuffa cage.
I'm tired with people arguing about the money side of it, about that, you can make crap matchups at a local promotion. You can make crap matchups here, there. It's about making money. The UFC is going to put this on pay-per-view. And there are millions upon millions of wrestling fans, diehard CM Punk fans, that talk about this guy like crazy, that are going to tune in. Is this anything for MMA? Is this anything good for the sport? No. This is about making a shit ton of money, and that's what it's going to do. It's disgusting.
I don't know if it will. I don't know if you're going to see a whole big fan base. I think in the beginning, when he did leave the WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it, I think when he did leave that was the time to strike. Now it's been a couple years. It's starting to fade. Who is he? I don't think he has. I think he has a cult following, but it's not that big mothership of the WWE, WWF push.
We'll see. Only thing I do know is that the following that Holly Holm has in New Mexico, CM Punk rivals that in Chicago. So the numbers will at least be decent. This pay-per-view, $199, I'm not saying that it's going to do record-breaking numbers, but in a whole, with CM Punk, it'll do better than average numbers for the year.
We shall see. Let's talk about the flyweight matchup that we skipped over. He's from Fit NHB. He was ranked, I believe, 11 or 12 at the time.
Somewhere near the top 10, getting there.
Ray Borg, Justin Scoggins. What was your thoughts on that matchup?
Justin Scoggins' right leg proved to be a lot more difficult for Ray Borg than he let on it was going to be in our interview. Borg looked slow. He couldn't get his grappling together. Scoggins is looked to, he's that flyweight now to take notice of. And Borg showed some holes in his game. We all kept wondering about his striking, and it looks like he didn't have the tools in the arsenal to close the distance with his feints and fakes.
How big and glaring are those holes?
I don't know if they're gigantic. I don't know if he was out of motion. He looked kind of slow that night. But there's a more glaring weakness than we once thought there was. He was so dominant in getting guys to the ground and controlling them, taking them back and doing what he wanted, that this was the first time we saw these problems. And Scoggins obviously looked to be a lot better than where he's ranked in 12th. We got to get some movement here in the flyweight division. That's what we know. Definitely, because we're seeing some of the same old stale names that haven't been in action still up there. Borg, something has to change for him to be able to compete, because there are beginning to be these guys that are these longer, lengthier flyweights, and Scoggins just looked amazing. Looked a lot more dangerous with his hands than I thought he was. We knew about his feet from his karate and his kickboxing, but his hands looked a lot better than I thought.
To me, Ray Borg, yeah, and I have to agree with you on everything you just touched on, Justin Scoggins, but to me, Ray Borg looked like he was stuck in quicksand out there from the opening bell. Anything he did to try and wiggle out of it and start up any kind of offense, he just dug himself deeper into it, into the quicksand, and before he knew it, it was over. I mean, he didn't look... Justin Scoggins looked bigger, stronger, faster. Whether you can chalk that up to his strength, Ray Borg's strength and conditioning coaches, it just wasn't his night. His camp just didn't go his way. Maybe he had injuries. Maybe he was sick. I don't know what it was. Ray Borg just did not look like he could get any kind of momentum going his way from the opening bell. Scoggins, I will say this, everything his corner told him to do, he did and executed it with perfection.
Also, thinking about it, Ray, we haven't seen him bleed that many times. I think his nose got bloodied up a lot. We were talking about him looking stuck in quicksand. That could affect it, having to have his mouth open more, because I did think he ate a lot of punches to the face. The nose can't breathe anymore.
Sure, and it could have happened. Where does Ray Borg go from here?
So I'm going to play a little flyweight game here. I've already thought about this. Where did all the flyweights go? Because the flyweights have been active in the last couple weeks. Well, last weekend we had Wilson Hess run. We already told you that Joseph Benavidez won. I'm thinking you got to get that fight together. That's near a number one contender fight. Talking about the guy that lost to Benavidez, there's Zach Makovsky. I got two options for Ray Borg. Makovsky has failed to fight in the upper echelon, losing to John Dodson, losing to Joseph Benavidez. We bring him back towards the pack. Ray Borg and Zach Makovsky, two guys that wanted on the ground. That could be interesting. Also, coming off a loss in his home country in Ireland, my other option would be seeing Paddy Houlihan against Ray Borg. Again, two grapplers, and Borg would again have to work against that size disadvantage. On the other side, real quick, Justin Scoggins, I'd like to see him take on Luis Smoka, who's coming off of the win over Paddy Houlihan. So that's where I see we get some movement going in that flyweight division.
I think you're doing the matchmaking job pretty good for that little foursome right there, and I would agree 100%. Speaking of strength and conditioning coaches, we're joined next by 365 Sports Performance, Diego Baca, and Training for Warriors, Lee. They're both strength and conditioning coaches. Lee has a background more in strongman style lifting, and Diego Baca is more speed and strength lifting. So, and they're both set up for athletes, whether they're combat sport athletes or athletes just in general. We're going to talk to them about proper lifting, proper techniques, what people should look out for, because there's a lot of McDonald's gyms out there now that are popping up, strength and conditioning claiming to be the top dude here, top guy here. I'm the best strength and conditioning coach. This is the way this athlete should be. how can parents and or athletes find the right fit for them? So we're gonna take a quick break. When we come back, we got our interview with Diego Baca and Training for Warriors Lee. Don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. The DC Life Uncensored.
The Fight Shop New Mexico in the Montano Plaza Shopping Center, located off Coors and Montano.
Welcome back to this week's edition of the DC Live. I'm your host, Sal Mike. Mike Frankel's taking a quick CageMinds.com break. And right now we're joined by two strength and conditioning coaches. One's with UCT Direct Fitness, Training for Warriors, Martin Rooney style. Look it up, Google it. We have Lee, and then we have from 365 Sports, Diego Baca. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Now let's jump right into it, and we'll break down all other aspects of sports and kids and youth and stuff. But let's jump into what our show mainly pertains to, which is combat sports. We're seeing a bunch of McDonald's popping up all over the place. And what I mean by McDonald's is a lot of these new strength and conditioning coaches are popping up gyms here and there and everywhere, and they're claiming to have the best recipe for combat sports. In your opinion, Lee, in terms of powerlifting, what have you seen done correct and incorrect here in the state of New Mexico?
I mean, if we're talking just straight powerlifting, it's kind of hard to say. You know, it's one thing to sit on the outside looking in and judging. It's another thing to be in the middle of it and trying to understand that athlete or those athletes or why you're taking that approach. I mean, you know, this isn't a one-size-fits-all kind of thing. It gets way more in depth than that. As far as going into the combat sports, I mean, you know, it's a wishy-washy road. Having been a combat athlete myself as well as a powerlifter, I never combined the two together. Maybe it was my body type, my body style. I knew that when I lifted heavy more often, it actually hurt me. In fact, I remember, probably like 2010, when I started training heavy again. I was fighting at 145 for Tom and Arlene. I had missed like 2-3 months of the gym, been hitting the weights heavy, squatting heavy, deadlifting heavy. Came in, Tom literally laughed in my face. Tom Vaughn laughed in my face and was like, "There's no way you're making 145 again." I was like, "Yeah, that ain't even gonna happen." Like, I had to move up after that. So, you know, it's hard to say because you got so many different types of people. You know, their body responds differently, their body adapts differently. You know, the way that you train them has to come down to them individually. So it's hard to say of what's right and what's wrong. You know, I mean, you know, we can speculate all day long about John Jones and Zia right now, but you know, it's their approach to him is their approach to him. I don't know if you do the same with anyone else. And yeah, there is a lot of people jumping kind of, so to say, on the bandwagon of training, you know, combat athlete, which in my opinion, if you've never been a combat athlete, you kind of have no grounds to say what a combat athlete should do. If you've never experienced it, and I mean even just the basic forms of training, you know, learning how to throw combinations and stand up, learning how to do things in jiu-jitsu and submission grappling, wrestling, you have no idea what it takes to really get to that point and what it takes to even compete at that level. So, I mean, for me, again, on the outside, I don't judge, but I think there's got to be the right approach for that individual at all times.
No, you mentioned John Jones, and we've all seen the videos, whether it be on Instagram or his other social media outlets. In his form, from what you've seen, is there a potential for him to be hurting himself more so and breaking his body down?
I mean, it's not going to be any more than training for his sport anyway. You know, the demands that are on an athlete, especially an athlete at his level, are so high for his body to perform at such a high level that it's a wishy-washy road. You can break yourself anyway. You know, he could literally walk into practice one day, not be thinking about a combination and slip a disc just as easy as he would if he was setting up for a 500-pound deadlift. So, you know, if anything, in his defense, I think lifting heavy for him will probably be a good thing if it's something he hasn't done regularly before. I think it's a new way of stimulating some new growth and some new strength and stability for his body. What comes down to is a practical application. And from what I can see, Zia's done a good job in applying the right methods for him. Now, we won't know until, again, he takes that first fight. But, you know, it's hard to say because, again, I mean, he could be driving to either gym and something could happen. So to kind of put it more on the training side of it and what he is or isn't doing, it's kind of not fair to anyone involved because that kind of stuff can happen at any point in time. I think, personally, what he's doing right now is a good thing for him if it's not something he hasn't done previously. I think that training heavy is good for most combat athletes because it puts stress on the bone structure as well, which as a combat athlete, I understand that having a stronger bone density gives me a stronger stability all around. It makes my body harder. I would rather have that than not do any strength training and take a risk on breaking a bone because my bones have become brittle from all the constant impact. So for me, I think it's the right approach. Now, again, I don't know the application and the ways he is doing it. From what I've seen online, you know, it looks good. But, you know, again, he can hurt himself any which way. So only time will tell.
Now, Diego, I mentioned the McDonald's gyms popping up and the new strength and conditioning. Everybody's trying to get into the game, whether it be with student athletes, college athletes, combat sport athletes, just regular Joe Schmoes. How can somebody tell the real from the fake in the strength and conditioning?
Well, the hard part about that is that up front you really can't, because you can walk into a facility and they can wine and dine you with cool equipment and brand new stuff and the latest and greatest, but unless they have any idea of what they're doing with all that stuff, there's really no way for a parent and or student athlete or just an athlete in general, just somebody who's, you know, post-collegiate, you know, whatever, there's really no way for them to tell up front unless you do some homework, you know. And I think, just to put it bluntly, I think there are a lot of facilities popping up out there right now that, you know, you can go and get some online certifications, and that's fine and dandy, you know, because we all have those same online certifications, because to train and do our job, you have to have those from a legal liability standpoint. But that doesn't necessarily make you, as some of these guys out there, especially on social media and Instagram, the self-proclaimed, we're the best or we're the greatest because this guy trains here or this girl trains here, or, you know, I mean, hell, for that matter, some of those student athletes or athletes were probably really good before they even started training there.
Yeah.
So for them to jump in and say, well, we're the best because we train this person, or we're the best because we do that, you know, excuse my language, but I think they're full of shit, because they're relying on the laurels of something else, and then they're going to say, well, yeah, I made this kid or I made this guy or that guy better and faster and stronger. Well, they were probably pretty good before they got to you, clown. So, you know, it's a little frustrating for me. I mean, I've been doing this a long time, and, you know, and I know Coach Lee's been doing this a long time as well, and it gets frustrating for us sometimes because, you know, there is no way to tell. And bringing it full circle with your question, there is no real way to tell. Because in the world of social media that we live in, you're what you post.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, if you're posting, you know, John Jones trains with us, or you're posting, you know, Alex Bregmans of the world, and you're posting, you know, this guy and this guy and this girl and that girl. If you're posting that, then to the outside world, it looks like you know what you're doing, because you can choose to post, you know, you can choose to post whatever you like, because there's filters and apps and, you know, change of this and change of that, and so to the outside world, you look like, you know, the greatest trainer on earth, when really you couldn't lift yourself out of a wet paper bag. You yourself as a coach.
Yeah.
And that's where, you know, that's what I've always loved and respected about being with Coach Lee, is that even when he was doing strength and conditioning with me, when he was fighting, I was learning just as much from those guys as they were from me, because I had just learned some of these training modalities. And to say that, well, come in and call myself, well, I'm the greatest MMA strength and conditioning coach because I had just brought Martin Rooney's TFW system to Albuquerque, would be a blatant lie, because that'd be me trying to ride off the coattails of somebody who was better and had been doing it longer. And to me, that's an injustice and doing a disservice to the athletes, to the guys, you know, because I'm not the best. I'm taking something that I just learned and trying to teach these guys while also trying to learn a little bit from them. Like Lee said, well, hey, coach, let's lift a little heavier this week. Okay, let's try it. But it's hard. It's hard to separate the contenders from the pretenders, as as we would say in the combat sports world, because you are what you post. You are what you post.
You get a lot of people selling dreams these days. A lot of guys that are promising you this because they know recruiters or they know this individual or that individual. When it comes down to it, if you didn't put in the work, you yourself as a coach didn't put in the work to make your athlete better, I don't want to hear that. I don't want to see it on social media. Keep those lies to yourself. You get so many people that do that these days. Social media is everything. I get it. Everyone's trying to be Insta famous now. That baffles my mind. That's a whole other topic. But, I'm not all about taking pictures of my athletes in the middle of their workout, because to me it takes away from that moment in time. And everyone does it for their own ways, and I get it. Athletes as a whole, they like that too. Some of them thrive on the Insta famous side of it. But for me, that's me taking myself away from someone who's paying for my attention. So if you're coming to me for a service, I'm going to do my damnedest as a coach to give you everything that I can give you. And I'm not going to sell you a dream. If I don't know that individual that's going to help you get recruited, I'm not going to tell you that. If I don't know everything there is to know about your sport, I'm not going to sell myself on that. If I truly can make you better, I'll let you know. But I can't tell you what I can help you with. And if that's not enough for you, then hey, we just had a job interview. I wasn't a good fit for you. You weren't a good fit for me. Hopefully you find someone down the road. But instead of having that these days, you got coaches that lie their ass off to say that they know this or they know that or this system will work for them. And the reality is they don't even know anything about it. In fact, they know dick about dick. They don't know their head from their ass half the time. And, again, you sell your athletes short. And all you're doing is like Coach said, you're riding their coattail. You're riding a number one, number two athlete in the state and saying you made them better. No. They were gifted to begin with. You can't take a 1 and 2 and not keep them at 1 and 2. They're going to stay 1 and 2 because they got to 1 and 2. So it's hard.
And what I in trying to use that term coattail off of even what Coach just said is that there are a lot of quote unquote performance or strength coaches that, especially in the combat world, because again, I've been around combat sports a long time. I've worked with the Gracie Baja School. I've worked with the Jackson's guys. Even some of the fit guys long before this whole thing was cool. We were doing it before it was cool to do. Yeah. Now it's cool to do it. You're like, I train this guy, I train that guy, and when we were doing it long before social media became big, it was like Coach Lee said, you're trying to find a system that for certain aspects will help the mass or the masses, but then you have to be able to have and do the due diligence to figure out your athletes as individuals. And that's kind of the hard part is as a performance coach or as a strength coach, unless you've done it yourself, then it's hard. To me, it's hard to be able to call yourself an expert or a professional. A guy that says, I train mixed martial arts athletes, awesome. You have some letters after your name and you have a bunch of really cool equipment that makes you look cool. Have you ever been choked unconscious with a gi? Have you ever been put in a head and arm and you can't figure out how to get out of it because you're a beginner level, no gi grappler? Have you ever bothered to figure out the first, second, or third pull of an Olympic lift? Because if you haven't, then you need to stay in your lane and you need to back off and let the people that have been there and done that do their job. And don't be this self-proclaimed, I'm the best or I'm the greatest because a couple guys don't know any better and they go to your facility or they go to your school to train under you because someone gave them some bad advice. If you don't know what that's like, if you've never experienced a tournament where they call your weight class and now you have 4 consecutive matches and you're 3-0 going into the finals and you are dog piss exhausted and you look up and you can't feel your hands or your feet because all of the blood is in your calves or your shoulders or your forearms, unless you know what that feels like, then you can't speak on that.
Yeah.
You can't say, well, I'm the best or we're the best, because how can you say you're the best when you don't know what it requires or what it takes to pick yourself up off the mat after the disappointment of possibly finishing first and you just got choked out or you got beat on points, or worst case scenario in the world of MMA, you got beat by a referee's decision or you lose by an advantage point. Some of these guys don't even know what the hell an advantage point is. But yet, I train so-and-so and, we're the greatest, fight, hashtag fit fight and fight family and all this other bullshit. Come on, man. It just, those of us that have been there, done that, that have been in the game long enough, we see right through you.
Selling dreams.
Yeah, selling dreams and delivering a nightmare.
So there has to be a way for these guys to understand that they're getting set up in the wrong direction.
It's hard, man.
And it's wild and mind-boggling to me that these guys don't see that.
They have to ask. It's hard because, and I understand even from the perspective of just the student athletes that I work with, I field phone calls every day from parents. What is your program about? Well, that gives you an opportunity because parents will ask. Older athletes, you know, semi-professional, professional, collegiate, post-collegiate athletes, oftentimes won't ask, what's cool? Like Coach Lee said, who's getting like for like?
Yeah.
Yeah, well, whose Instagram page has 5,000 followers when your program is garbage?
Let's look at these new footwork drills that aren't going to do shit on a football field, but they look cool, so let's train those.
It's, you know, again, it's, you know, I just saw a saying the other day that said, on the internet you can choose to be anything you want. It's so disappointing that so many people choose to be stupid. Because that's what it is. Again, and going back to, and it's, if the athlete doesn't take the time to ask, then it is what it is. But as an athlete, you would think, especially these, you know, professional mixed martial artists that have a lot of money on the line with sponsorships and contract fights and re-upping on a contract with various organizations. It's their livelihood. Well, if you don't ask, then we don't tell. Because if you don't ask us, how are we going to know? If you don't ask us, how are we going to know that you're looking for somebody that, you know, and again, and this isn't to say that the two of us sitting here talking to you right now are the ones that these guys should be going to. That's not what we're saying at all. What we're saying is at the very least, ask. Find out. Hey, I'm walking into your facility, I'm looking for a strength and conditioning coach for mixed martial arts and or for Muay Thai or for Jiu-Jitsu. Do you have anybody in this facility that has that type of background? Ask. It's a simple question. And like Coach Lee said a while ago, it's either going to be a good fit. Let's sit down and talk about it. What are you looking to do? It's either going to be a good fit or it's not. And that's okay. I've had a number of athletes that it just wasn't the right fit. But I've had a number of athletes that it was the right fit and we had a lot of success. So, you know, again, it is what it is.
Absolutely. Now let's talk about UCT Fitness and 365 Sports Performance. Lee, tell us why somebody should choose UCT Fitness and the TFW program coming into this facility.
I mean, if you're coming in for this facility, you're not going to beat the price for what you're getting. You're getting a one-size-fits-all. I mean, we have pretty much anything and everything that you can imagine under one roof. And if we don't have it, we always have the means to get it and bring it in. The biggest thing is again, the price. You're not going to beat the price. For what you're getting, unlimited classes with over 30 classes to choose from a week, unlimited use if you pay the full membership for $65, you're not going to find that in town. You know, we've had a lot of people come in and say, oh, I wish you had showers. Well, guess what? We installed showers. We had a lot of people come in and say, oh, well, you guys don't have a pool. Well, yeah, you're right. We don't have a pool. We have 8,000 square feet. We have 14 heavy bags. We have a full indoor 40-yard turf. We have a full weight floor with bumper plates and steel. We have bench presses. We have everything that a normal gym would have without a lot of the hassle. We have no contracts. We got, you know, you're not tied to the gym, no sign-up fees, no nothing like that. You come in and pay as you want. You know, so what more can we offer? You know, we're as open as we can get. And that's the one thing that, having worked at corporate gyms, I've got nothing to hide. This gym has nothing to hide. You got a question? We got you. If we don't have it, we'll fit it for you. If you feel like we don't do enough kettlebells, I'll be glad to send you down to Firebells. But for what you're getting here, you're not going to beat it anywhere else in town. So for me, I mean, you can't beat the program. You've got all different skill levels, all coming in at different times, all coming in for the same goal. Everyone wants to be fit. Now you have everyone else in here that, because we're a smaller gym, you know, it's a family. It's a fit for everybody. You know, you come in for at least a month and you start to learn everyone's names. Everyone starts to find out who you are, what you do, what you like, how to motivate each other. That to me says a lot more as far as a gym goes. You know, all bullshit and price aside, it's a family here. And if you've been here long enough, you know that. You know, how many times have you been asked how you're doing, Sal? Even just by regular members.
Multiple times.
See? You know, it's for me, you can't beat what you're getting, and you're not going to find it anywhere else in town. Again, we have everything that you could possibly imagine and then some.
Absolutely. And with you, Diego, you train your student athletes here with 365 Sports Performance. What is it? What would you tell a parent that's calling and saying, "Hey, why should I choose you as my son's strength and conditioning coach?"
Well, I even just to piggyback off of what Coach Lee just said, even more important than the stuff that we do have is what I found, being around for a little while now, is knowledge. We have knowledge in this building. We have knowledge under this roof. We have guys and gals that are not only nationally certified coaches in a number of training modalities, but those same coaches live it and do it every day. There isn't. I just took on the challenge of learning real, true to the game Olympic lifting for the first time in my life. Did I understand Olympic lifting before? Yeah, I kind of could wrap my head around it. But in getting with Coach Lee, who's a certified Olympic coach, that has now changed my whole thought process on everything. Again, going to the, you can talk about it, but are you going to be about it? You can say X, Y, and Z, but unless you live it and do it yourself, I don't know that you can necessarily teach it. And they say, in order to be able to teach something, you have to be able to do it. And you have to make mistakes. You have to, I coached at Cibola football and wrestling for 11 years. I've done sports specific, whatever you want to call it, strength and conditioning, performance training. It's changed names in my career multiple number of times.
It'll change again.
And it'll change again, exactly, Coach. And the thing of it is, more so than anything, and I can't stress this enough, is knowledge, information. Knowledge is power. And if we, as a staff, and I say we because my company is quote unquote, 365 Sports Performance, well, we're powered by UCT Fitness. So, I'm just a branch of what we offer here for, the members and their student athletes, is if we don't have the answer, we'll get it. We don't have, the egos and the pride where we know everything. We don't. We know that.
Yeah.
We learn from each other every day.
Yeah.
That's why I started lifting with Coach Lee, because I see these guys on the platform going, I've always wanted to learn how to do that. Now I've got student athletes that want to learn. So I've taken the very, very basic introductory stuff that Coach Lee and Coach Manny have taught me, and I'm trying to regurgitate that and teach them. Because I figure before I can pass them on to Coach Lee and Coach Manny to do more advanced techniques, if I can't teach them the basic fundamentals, quote unquote, tying your shoes of Olympic lifting, then I don't need to be having them do that kind of stuff. If you can't differentiate between the first, second, and third pull, well, there's a problem.
Yeah, that's a huge problem.
I'm not going to set my student athletes up for failure by saying, yeah, I can do everything. Well, again, are you what you are on social media? Are you what you're saying you are? Or are you the truth? And you say, okay, you know what? I don't know how to do that. I've never trained this type of athlete, or I've never done that training modality. But you know what? We have somebody who has. We have somebody who can. And that's why, being under this roof, if a parent calls me and says, do you have someone that can do corrective exercise? Well, I can do the basics, but we have 2 certified corrective exercise specialists in the house. If they need something more intense than what I can provide, here you go. You don't have to leave our facility. Like Coach Lee said, we have everything under one roof. Do you want to learn how to, do stand-up? We have that. So what that you're a baseball player?
Yeah.
So what that you're a football player? Do you have a certified speed performance coach? Yes, I've done that. I ran a performance program. I get it. Do you have somebody that can teach the Olympic lifts? Yes. We have a couple of them, as a matter of fact. We have former collegiate strength coaches in the facility. So for any parent that says, well, why should I bring my student athlete to you? A, because we care about your student athlete and we're not going to set them up for failure. And B, if you need something and we can't provide it, we'll figure out a way to get it to you.
Now, Coach, if a parent listening or an athlete wants to get in contact with you with 365 Sports Performance, how do they do that?
They can call me directly at 505-480-2446. That's the direct line. That's the only line. Or they can email me at coachdb65@yahoo.com.
And Lee, how can anybody get involved with UCT Fitness and the Training for Warriors program here at the gym?
You can find us online at uctdirect.com. You can also get a hold of me. I'm at the gym every day except for Sunday. And my phone number is 505-717-5014. I'm the gym manager here. So pretty much anything you got, any questions, concerns, I'll be the one you're dealing with anyway.
Awesome. Gentlemen, thank you for the time. I really appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thank you,
Thank
Sal.
you, sir.
This is the DC Life. We'll return right after this.
The Fight Shop New Mexico in the Montano Plaza Shopping Center, located off Coors and Montano.
All right, we're back. This is the DC Life Uncensored. We were joined by the strength and conditioning coaches. We touched on everything you need to look for in terms of strength and conditioning. And right now we're going to have Micah Frankel. I know it's been kind of a hectic time and stuff like that for you. You're going to break down this weekend's Jackson's MMA Series event. You're going to touch on all the local scenes, cageminds.com, Minute. Micah, it's your show.
Well, CageMinds.com, let's start talking. Talking about results from this past weekend. Another New Mexican has made his way to the UFC, Cody the Freight Train East, and he did it with landing a head kick. So Josh Applett followed him to the ground, pounded away. Cody East, a huge win at Legacy 51 on his way to the UFC. That's just huge, right? Big deal. Also, a big deal, UFC Talk New Mexico. John Jones is back officially. April 23rd, Jones Cormier 2, UFC 197, with a co-main event of Demetrius Johnson defending his title against Henry Cejudo. John Jones can't keep himself out of the news. Sal, come on in. Tell us about what's going on now.
So KRQE ran a story last night, and it might have been a slow night, but still, it's still a big deal. Is John is actually driving? They're claiming John is driving without a license, and so I guess he's got to go to traffic court this week coming up. We'll see how that plays out. I know he's on probation, so it could get serious very, very fast, or it could just be another little slap on the wrist. And hey, don't do it again. I don't understand why this guy does not hire a driver.
I'm volunteering. John Jones, hit me up. Micah Frankel, I'll take the day job.
I mean, it's $20,000 to have somebody drive you around full time, take you all over, stay sober, whatever. To me, that's or less even. That's kind of the yearly amount is what I'm saying, and just have somebody full-time at your beck and call driving you around. You already have a guy here, Micah Frankel, that'll do it for you and drive you around. But we'll see how it plays out here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. I'm sure Zuffa Brass is well aware of what's going on, and they'll be keeping an eye on it. However, I think it's kind of funny that this stuff happens right as soon as they announce this UFC event, right around the same time. Again, I'll say John Jones is the only guy that's going to be able to beat John Jones, period. I don't believe there's a heavyweight. I don't believe there's a light heavyweight right now in the world that can handle him inside the cage.
John Jones is about 21-1 in the cage, and I even consider that one a loss to himself, and I think he's 0-4 against himself. We're talking about hitting a woman with a car, we're talking about running a car into a pole, we're talking about an ill-gotten elbow, and now this transgression, he seems to be 0-4 against himself, but good luck to John Jones. In other news, I could cry when I heard this. There's Tim Means flagged for a dirty test is what it comes up as. He's in the process of having the B sample tested, in the process of having his supplements tested. Tim Means is out of the fight, though, April 21st. And Donald Cowboy Cerrone will now be meeting Alex Cowboy Oliveira from Brazil. They're both lightweights moving up to featherweight in Pittsburgh. And let's not think that Oliveira is a walkover. He has wins over KJ Noons. He has some tough wins in the octagon. That'll be a fun fight. this past weekend, though. Also news for results, Brian Mendoza, now 13-0, did it out in Kansas once again. 9th career knockout, took out Joel Vargas, 53 seconds into the 3rd round. We know Brian likes to stay active. Sky is the limit for this young man.
Those hook shots are brutal. I wish he had more of a fan base here in New Mexico. He is from Rio Rancho, New Mexico. That's where he lives. He didn't have, like you mentioned off air, he didn't have really an amateur background here in the state, so there's not that following a la Matthew Grego, who we saw a couple weeks make his pro debut, to a huge, giant crowd, loud, rambunctious crowd here, loving him to death. They say they remind him of shades of Johnny Tapia, like in movements inside the ring. I hear outside the ring he's kind of similar to him as well. I hope that isn't the downfall for him eventually. I hope he can learn those lessons of past fighters and past professionals and keep moving forward, because I'd like to see another world champion come out of New Mexico.
We love our fighters, and we love supporting them. And like you said, it's going to come, because before we know it, Brian Mendoza is going to be in a big fight. So people going to have to keep an eye on for him. We also got news for Bellator 51. Steve Mean Machine Garcia is going to be on the card. He had an opponent changed recently. He was going to be taking on Ray Rodriguez, who is 8-4 as a veteran opponent. Instead, he's taking on fellow undefeated prospect Ricky Tersois. I have no clue. Did I say that last name wrong?
I'm not even going to try and attempt it, Micah.
We're calling him Ricky. He's 5-0. And Ricky has a wrestling background, also Taekwondo black belt, been in martial arts from the age of 9. Steve Garcia, an unutilized jewel in Bellator. 5 of his 6 wins by knockout. The kid's been impressive every time I've seen him throughout his run in the cage. Sal, got anything to add on that one?
Somebody's gots to go, and it's 6-0 versus 5-0. I think it's at least he's inside the Bellator cage. From here on, though, they need to start moving him up, put him under at least the spike portion of the card. Let's see what happens at this point.
We can hold our fingers crossed. Right now, there's 4 fights announced for the card, so I'm going to keep my fingers crossed that they realize that they should also have this bantamweight bout up there on the main card, but we don't know about it. So I think we've covered a lot of what's to come. Now, also, what you could go to CageMinds.com and do is check out a lot of the great interviews we got, because like we said, it's Fight Week, Jackson's MMA series. We got interviews up there with Javier Cepeda. He'll be facing Ricky Esquivel. Got interviews with both of them. Jesse Tafoya and his good friend Henry Tucker sat down for a joint interview. Jesse's going to be fighting Marquise Smith. We got them on interview. And actually, if you want to go back, this is going to be episode 14 of the DC Life. Go back to episode 12. Refresh yourself. Again, hear from Jordan Espinosa and Nick Urso. They're going to be on the main event leading up to this weekend's Jackson's MMA series.
If that card stays together, it's going to be probably fight card of the year right now.
Right now. And Santa Fe's own Natalie Roy is in the co-main event against Audrey Perkins, who's making her pro debut, a longtime amateur. So there's a lot of great stuff happening for that local scene. The main event, you've got Espinosa's wrestling, his improved striking, taking on the striking of Nick Urso, who's got, I think 4 wins by knockout as a pro, and his improved grappling, been up there making his rounds around the country, training with Izzy Martinez in Chicago. This is going to be a high-paced flyweight matchup. And then, like we said in the co-main event, look for Roy and her striking. Perkins has most of her wins by submission. She's going to be looking to take this one to the ground. You got a striking battle that's going to happen between Esquivel and Cepeda. Someone is looking, but they're both looking for TKOs. Esquivel, it's a win for him just getting in that cage, coming back off of a torn ACL. I'm so happy for him that he's at this point, that he can get back in the cage. Can't wait to see how that turns out. Marquise Smith is a great wrestler. Jesse Tafoya has submissions all day. They've both promised to show off their striking and stand and bang. I'm going to keep my fingers crossed for that one. Efren Thompson can throw hard. He's on the card. Hunter Tower can take it, throw, and submit people. Also, the women are going to be on the card. Josana Olas has monster kicks, and she's going to be taking on Arizona's Mercedes White. Can't wait to see her back in the cage. It is a stat card, top to bottom. Slade Ring moving up to bantamweight. We know he's a technical submission artist. He's going to have to worry for the crazy spin kicks of Fernando Sanchez. I love this card. I'm so hyped for it. That's Saturday night, Buffalo Thunder, February 13th. And, oh yeah, I forgot to mention, the night before, I'll expect to see everybody down at Fit and HB, the amateurs. We got Battlegrounds. You know they always put on a show there. The future is for both of these cards. It's a great weekend for the future. And then the following weekend, Friday night, the 19th of February, we'll see you out in Hobbs. Havoc and Hobbs. That's MMA, pro and amateur. They're doing a great thing, actually. Revolutionary. Title belts for every winner that night. Of something to take home with you. Like a medal, something to carry on. Remember that victory. And then following that, on Saturday, February 20th, Calma Rock Casino, Rumble at the Rock 2. You got the Sanchez brothers. You've got Xavier Pacheco versus David Proa. You've got Amberly Trujillo, Kristen Montano, and Tony Valdez taking on a true veteran in Raymond Chacon. Calma Rock should be packed. We got boxing, MMA, amateur smokers. That's everything kickboxing. It's a happy Valentine's. This is a crazy 2 weekends. I'm so excited.
It's going to be exciting. Any last words before we go for this week?
I keep running out of breath, and I keep getting so excited thinking about it. Also on the 27th, Michael Bisping and Anderson Silva, a fight that a lot of people just years in the making.
That's going to be all happening, or I should say you can find the info about all of this that Micah just rambled off and took breath and, dude, breathe.
I can't. I'm so excited.
At cageminds.com. Check it out. That's it for this week's edition of the DC Life. The DC Life Uncensored is recorded every week inside the Fight Shop New Mexico on Coors and Montano. It is always up and ready, available at cageminds.com. Check it out. Check us out. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next week.